Hello you wonderful people, and welcome to a slightly different video that it's been a while since I've done, which is going to be based on photography. Recently been doing a lot of stuff in the RC world, RC scene, buggy racing, and bashing some stuff, got some projects going on and stuff, so a lot of stuff to look forward to, and got some stuff planned here for the channel, so I thank you guys for tuning in. Today's video is going to be based off of fast motion photography, and if you're new to photography and you're trying to figure some of this stuff out, this might be a very important video for you to learn some stuff in and then actually go out into the field and practice it. Starting from the basics, you want to have a basic understanding of ISO, shutter speed, and aperture. That's going to be your exposure triangle or whatever people call it. And you want to understand these three different things, and really I could make a whole separate video just based off of what you want to adjust and how, based off what you're shooting. Today we're going to be focusing more on fast motion, and the examples that I have are going to be a couple of different photos of birds, and then also remote control cars going around the track. So I've actually found myself getting some more practice and some more experience doing fast motion photography for RC cars, and I might actually start picking up some work for people that actually want photos of their cars going around the track. People are willing to pay money and to do that because it takes experience and time, and you have invested, and you've probably invested, or you're thinking of investing in a camera, which I've done a review on the A7R IV that you can check out as well if you are looking at a full frame mirrorless camera. The ISO is going to be the image sensor's sensitivity to light. And so if you are in a darker environment, you can turn up the ISO to be more sensitive and be more sensitive to light. You're not letting any more light in, but you're introducing noise. So you're going to be getting some noise in your photos. You'll notice that a lot more the higher your ISO is. You can also use editing software tools to denoise photos, and that's what I would also recommend. If you're going to get a camera and you're going to spend the time learning, you need to get yourself some kind of basic software for photo editing in RAW, so you can basically just maximize the benefits and the performance of your camera. You'll be getting a lot more information to play with when it's a RAW file versus just shooting in JPEG. For fast motion photography, I tend to sometimes shoot a little bit underexposed and then add light in post, which I'll get to in a little bit. For editing software, I use Adobe Lightroom. Now there's Lightroom Classic, there's Lightroom, and then there's Photoshop. And depending on what you're trying to do and what kind of photography you want, I would check out those plans and see what all you really need. For me, I just use the basic slimmed down version of Lightroom, just Lightroom, the basic version, and I've had lots of success with it. It's a little bit more user friendly, a little bit probably easier, simpler to navigate through the menu system and the user interface, and it does a pretty good job. And for I think $10 a month, you can get a terabyte of cloud storage, which is plenty, and it gives you lots of the features that you want to get exposed to when you get into photography. Alright, so I know I digressed a little bit there, so I want to get back on track. I don't want to skip over shutter speed and aperture, so just to go over shutter speed very quick, that's going to be how fast your shutter is going to be taking that photo. The higher shutter speed, the less light you're going to be able to let in, because you have less time that your sensor is going to be exposed to that light. When you're shooting photos of moving objects, you're going to want a higher shutter speed but the trade-off is going to be less light, and that's where the other variables come in into play. And then you can also play around with some light effects by doing night photography and having longer exposures, so you can get like trailing headlights, brake lights of cars, and you can, that's how you get lots of those different effects, is by adjusting the shutter speed. Lastly, very quick, aperture. So aperture is going to be the iris of your lens and how much light you let in. Generally in lower light environments, I tend to shoot with it wide open, but there are going to be some situations where you're going to want to have a higher aperture. So higher aperture number, it lets in the less amount of light. So it seems a little bit backwards. If you want to have a subjective focus and a very blurry background, you want to let in as much light as possible. So the lower f-stop, the lower the aperture, more light you're going to let in, and the blurrier the background is. And then your focus point's going to be a little bit more in one area. Now, if you wanted to have more of your subject in focus, or you wanted the background to not be as blurry, you'd let in less light, and so you would shoot with a higher aperture. So with ISO, shutter speed, aperture, kind of roughly, just quickly explained. Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. If you guys have any questions, definitely comment down below. I keep an eye on comments. Smaller channel, so if you have any questions or clarifications on things, just ask. That's just kind of the basic understanding of ISO, shutter speed, and aperture, and then I also hit on why it's a little bit, or why it is important to have some form of editing software so you can play around and take things to more extreme measures if you have to when you're finally processing that photo. So one of the examples I have touched on that we're going to be looking at is going to be RC cars going around the track pretty quick, and you're going to want to have a higher shutter speed for that. So the more motion, more shutter speed. This photo I shot at 1/1000th of a second, but I found myself shooting anywhere from 800 to 1250, but the 800 or 1/800th of a second tend to be maybe just a little bit too slow. And when you finally get a really sharp and the object in focus, the higher shutter speed is going to allow for you to retain more of that detail. 1/1000th of a second, a little bit underexposed, but that's fine. I don't mind doing that because in post you're able to change that, and I'll show you that effect. But so first thing you notice that this photo isn't composed the best. When you're trying to get lots of photos of moving objects, you take a lot of photos, and sometimes you kind of have to work with what you got. And in this, I had to crop in, and then I had to play with some of the settings and also the denoise. And so you'll see, so moving over to, example, same photo, but with it being edited, you can now see the photo with a decent bit of noise. Colors of the car pop more, the light and overall picture is better, and you have more of an isolated subject. And then moving over to the noise reduction, which is why I love noise reduction, you see here that you lose a little bit of the detail, but you're able to eliminate just about all of that noise. And using the denoise tool in Adobe Lightroom is very helpful, especially when you're working in a situation where you have limited light, you're trying to get that higher shutter speed. And so in post, you're going to be able to change lots of those parameters, and then you can actually get a really good photo from something that might have not looked that special to begin with. And you don't want to doctor up a photo too much because you want to have that natural appeal. You want to have a solid photo. The better photo you can have to begin with, the better the end result. This photo, it turned out all right. It's not anything too crazy, but hopefully it illustrates that example for you guys. All right, moving on to example number 2. It's the same jump but different car. I was taking some photos for a friend of mine, Rick, at EN Hobbies. And in this one, you can see it's underexposed, but I did get his car in focus, and it was a pretty sharp photo. And then moving to the after photo, we will see that I already did the noise reduction, but I did adjust the exposure, and it turned out to be a very solid photo. Also in line with the camera, so making sure you're on level with your subject a little bit, not too high or too low. So it was level with the camera, and so you're able to to get a solid photo that way as well. And definitely take lots of photos and then try a whole bunch of different things and play around with the software, experiment with things. Try taking photos that you know might be a little bit too underexposed, so then you can see how much you can play with adding light to an image and how much detail you can retain versus what you can't retain. Don't just take photos if it's a good day out. Like if it's a darker day out and not as much light, or you're in a situation, you'll have more of an understanding of what you can actually correct and fix. So that way you're not trying to adjust your ISO way too high because you don't feel like adding any light in post. You just want to get a photo. And if that's what you want to do, then you can just increase your ISO to crazy levels, but you'll have lots of noise in those images. So here's another example of a shot that was taken at a very high shutter speed, which is this of this hawk. And it's a very, not as sharp as I want it, but it's really sharp. When you look at like the ends of the wings, they have a little bit of blur, but subject was in focus. It was good. It was shot at 1/1250th of a second. Low ISO, so I didn't have to worry about the light. I had plenty of light, and so I was able to shoot at that higher shutter speed with very little regard for anything else. And then ISO, I do like to shoot on auto ISO. If you don't know how to set that up, it's different on different cameras, but shooting on auto ISO is great. Basically, how much noise do you want in your photo? If you want, obviously you don't want as much, so you want to see how much are you willing to let before it's too much noise and then it ruins the photo. And then you can set that depending on what you're willing to accept. You can set that ISO, and different cameras handle noise differently, so you can have two cameras that both are set at like 6400 ISO, but one of them might have more noise than the other. And so you want to test out with your camera, take photos in different situations, and then see what works good for you and your camera, your gear. And just a little side note here on lenses, and also just aperture in general, is that when you do see some lenses that are very expensive, lots of the time it's just because of the aperture and how much light that they're willing to let in. So you pay more for that. So that's why you can have two lenses that have the same focal length, but one can be 3 times the price. And that's gonna allow you to play with the aperture a lot more and get more of that customized look to the photos that you're taking. And then it also allows you to use a lower ISO or ISO, so then you're not getting too much noise in your photos. So there is a benefit, and that's why lots of people do say the lens is just as important, if not more, than the camera. All right, so moving on to the next example, these are some geese that were taking off at a pond, and I was able to get a pretty sharp photo. And if I look at what I was shooting at, so I was shooting at 1/1600th of a second, so pretty high shutter speed. The ISO was at 3200, So a little bit higher, but I don't know if that's what I had my max ISO at. It might have been 3200. If I have a decent amount of light in the day, I don't like to shoot much above 3200. Sometimes I'll take it to 6400, and then if I'm in a situation where I don't really have much of a choice, I will do what is it, 12,400 I think is what the next step is. But this photo turned out pretty good. You can crop in and you can see the droplets of water, and the wings are frozen, and thankfully I had enough light to get it to where it is. I didn't really even edit this one. This was just how it came out of the camera. I would probably make some minor changes to it, but it's not too bad. And then moving back over to the RC car scene, I have a level shot of a car going around the track, and I shot it at 1,250th of a second, and it was in focus. And so it's a sharp photo. It looks solid. Not too much to really add. It's just same kind of advice as what I've kind of given earlier. Going in post and adding some more light with the exposure, and then also using the denoise tool to take away some of that noise, but then you're also trading detail. So sometimes you might not want to denoise it as much, and with Lightroom you can adjust how much noise you want to remove because you're trading some of that detail. And so you got to keep that in mind as well, because some photos you might not be able to salvage that much because of what capabilities you currently have with your gear. Some other advice that I have when you're shooting, depending on where you are, you gotta remind yourself sometimes to find new positions. Sometimes you can get stuck at one position where you're trying to get a photo because it looks really good, but then you might be missing out on other angles that you could be at to get different shots, different photos, shooting at different focal lengths and stuff like that. Another thing is also setting a focus point. Sometimes it's hard for the camera to pick up what I noticed with the car coming around a corner really quick, and sometimes it's not able to focus. So rather than taking 100 photos trying to get one, you can set that focus point, and with your camera you can, depending on what features your camera has, with Sony you can add it to where it'll visually show you where it's focusing on the screen, so then you can focus it to that predetermined point and take a burst of photos when that car is coming in to that corner, and then you can isolate the focus a lot better than just trying to get lucky with the autofocus on the camera. So that pretty much covers everything I wanted to in this video. I hope you guys did find it helpful, and if you have any questions or anything that I didn't clear up enough, definitely leave a comment down below and I'll try and get back with you as soon as I can. Photography is definitely a nice hobby to get into, and it can sometimes maybe feel overwhelming, but after you kind of get some of the basics down and you remind yourself of some of these things, then it becomes easier and it becomes fun, because it is somewhat of an art form. You can take photos on auto, or you can learn a little bit more, and hopefully a video like this with some of these photo tips that I have given you, you're able to go out and take better photos. So if you guys enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, all that stuff. I know I just gotta say it, because who knows, maybe if you found it helpful, you wouldn't mind checking out some other stuff on the channel. Been a minute since I've done a photography based video, but it plays into some of the stuff I do, and it's fun. And learning along the way and sharing either my findings or any experience that I have with you guys can make you guys better photographers, and have you guys think more critically about how you are doing this hobby. Anyways, hope you guys have a phenomenal rest of your day, rest of your week, rest of your month. See you guys in the next video. Peace.